Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's very hot here in the UK. We're in the midst of a heat wave. Hence the reason no shirt. Sorry, I've got a shirt on, no tie, a suit jacket. As you know, it's just after 8:30 here in the UK, and we're coming to you live from the studios of British Muslim TV in Wakefield with this week's edition of Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq. We're broadcasting Sky Channel 752 and across social media at British Muslim TV. Wherever you are joining us from around the world, a very warm welcome. Now, we want you to comment on the big stories we're covering tonight. Call us now on 01924 231 083 or messages on WhatsApp number, which is on the screen now. And if you're watching this on Facebook, post your comments in the chat box and we'll read some of them on air later. Tonight, first, we head to Blackburn in Lancashire to talk to the inspiring disabled activist Idreace Mohammed about his campaign to make gyms more disabled friendly and is raising funds for a disabled gym in the town. It's a powerful discussion, and we're looking forward to having that chat very, very shortly. We then head to Sheffield in South Yorkshire to talk to the broadcaster Mohammed Shafaqat about his return to the radio airwaves with his new show on Link FM. And we'll be talking to him about what now for Pakistan, and will Imran Khan be back in power anytime soon. And we finish off in London and talk to the journalist Taj Ali about his research on South Asian political activism over the years and how you can help document the story that is being written. So we want to hear from you tonight. You can call us on 01924 231 083, messages on British Muslim TV, across social media. Alternatively, you can send us a WhatsApp message. The number is on the screen. Now, the questions we're considering tonight: why in 2020 are our gyms not disabled user friendly, and what can be done? What now for Pakistan and Imran Khan? And how did our forefathers fight for their voice in the early years, in their years when they came to this country? Please share your thoughts on 01924 231 083 or messages on WhatsApp, post on social media, and we'll read some of your comments throughout the programme. Now, let's get started on the programme. There were 10.9 million people, or there are 10.9 million people living in the UK with a disability. That's 1 in 5 of the total of British population, which is a significant number. According to the Activity Alliance, a disability rights organisation, 4 out of 5 of the 10.9 million disabled people want to become more active but don't have the opportunity due to a lack of accessibility. The 2021 Paralympic Games motivated hundreds of disabled people of all abilities and backgrounds to head off to their local health club and get fit. But for so many, access becomes such an issue and that sooner rather than later, they're left unhappy. So what can be done, and how can we ensure that gyms are suitable for disabled people? One person who's not taking this lack of services for disabled people lying down has set up a fundraiser for disabled gym in Blackburn. His name is Idreace Mohammed. He's a slight speech impediment and will be helped by Wasim Khan during this interview. Pleased to say Idreace Mohammed and Wasim Khan is joining us live from Blackburn in Lancashire, as I said, along with his brother-in-law, Wasim Khan. A very warm welcome to both of you to the programme. Such a delight to have this discussion. Idreace, how are you doing? Are you okay?
I'm okay, how are you?
Okay, yeah. And first, tell us, how does your disability affect your everyday living?
So basically, he needs support getting out of bed, he needs support feeding, he needs support going out anywhere. In anything he wants to do, he needs basically 2 or 3 people with him.
Okay. And where did your interest in keeping fit come from?
So basically, I moved out when we were 18 from home because I was more independent. So I used to get support going out. I wanted to go to the gym. So I started the gym, and obviously I liked it, so I came down.
We thank you for your patience with the conversation with Idreace, and really grateful that his brother-in-law is also joining us. We'll come back and have that conversation and then talk to Mohammed Shafaqat, who's going to be joining us from Sheffield. We'll then be heading to London, talk to the broadcaster and journalist Taj Ali, who will also be talking about that, and really looking for your answers or questions around gyms. We're having an exclusive conversation with the one and only Idreace Mohammed, who's joining us from Blackburn. We're talking about gyms not being disabled, having disabled-friendly access and sort of experience from a disabled person. He's obviously has a speech impediment, so we ask for your patience as you follow this program, but he's joined by his brother-in-law, who is going to be guiding us and making sure that the message that he wants to get out is being included, which is Brother Wasim Khan is also with us as well. Idreace, thank you so much for your patience. We're back on air. We were just talking before the break about your interest in keeping fit. What has the support been like from family and friends as you maintain your interest in keeping fit?
To be honest, apart from the video and my sister, a couple of friends, I got enough support from family because I wasn't the way I am. I got my family got no confidence in me.
He's trying to say basically because of the way he is, people are looking at him like he can't do as much as the person who's walking, or the person who's normal, as they say.
Yeah.
It's a bit upsetting because as a Muslim, we believe that everyone is created by Allah and any creation for all Muslim brothers and sisters. God respect that. It's a bit upsetting.
He's trying to say he should share the same opportunities as anybody else, no matter what his disability.
Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? It's just a sense of people watching you. How do you cope with that? How do you handle that? All the eyes on you, if you like.
That's the main thing he's more concerned about. When he goes to the gym, or he did go to the gym before, a lot of people look at him like and say, oh, look at him, how is he this way, why is he this way? He feels, basically, when people look at him, he thinks of all the questions they're thinking in their head.
I want to get older, to get used to it, but it's still hates a feeling. Like you say, everyone got a feeling, no matter what you are, or who you are. Every human has got feelings, and most people don't think about that when they see someone else.
So what did he say, Wasim? Do you want to?
He's basically trying to say everybody's got feelings, and when they see him, they feel like he's got no right to show emotion, or show feelings, or show ambition, or anything.
Yeah, that.
He wants to basically prove them all wrong.
Yeah, well, I think you're doing you're doing a fantastic job on all the work that you do. You know, I bet none of them could do that. So let's talk about those services. I mean, obviously, you're in Blackburn. What do you make about the services for disabled people in the town?
There's not really much services in Blackburn. There's a couple of gyms, but for him, it'd be very hard to get into the gym. And then once he is in the gym, there's not enough equipment or the right equipment he can use.
Yeah. And it's about the local authority, councillors. Has there been any sort of work with them to try to find out if they're going to consider supporting Idreace's campaign?
Basically, he spoke to an MP called Kate Holland, and she's basically looked into it, and he's also spoke to a few fundraising groups. But to even pilot the scheme, it's a £20,000 target he's got to reach. So that's why he's starting a Just Giving page.
Yeah, that's really, really important. And we've got about 3 minutes until our break, but let me ask you this question. Why is it so important that disabled people are given facilities so that they can also keep fit and healthy?
Because he feels like no matter what you are, what color you are, what race you are, even what religion you are, everybody should be treated equally. Bottom line. So he's trying to design a gym not only for disabled people, but for people with mental illnesses, for any kind of illness, just to make them feel comfortable going to the gym and being healthy.
Yeah, just to be normal and to be able to, enjoy your fitness, enjoy whatever you do. I suppose this is more for you, Wasim, rather than Idreace. How do you, as a brother-in-law, but as a family member and supporter of Idreace, how do you keep your cool when people are judging him?
Because what it is I'm very close to him, and he's got had a lot of people say a lot of stuff with him in life. He lets it bounce off. So he basically doesn't really take it straight to his heart, but he takes it as motivation to carry on and achieve his dreams. Because he knows that everybody thinks he can't do it, so he will prove that he can do it.
Yeah, that's really, really important. Idreace, we've probably got a couple of minutes before our break, and 90 seconds before our break. I just wanted to ask you a question. What is it that drives you to keep fit?
Say that again.
What drives you to keep fit?
What drives me to keep fit? I wish I could go to the gym, eat well. I wish all the negative people keep no negative, keep positive. I wish as a Muslim, I believe in Allah, so everything happens for a reason.
He believes Allah has made him this way to achieve the dreams he wants to achieve.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
He's very comfortable in his own body, even though he's disabled.
Yeah. Subhanallah. What a powerful point, Idreace, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and give you health and give you success. We just need to take a quick break, gentlemen. I know you're staying with us, Idreace and Wasim, and we'll continue this important conversation. And suppose it's the time for us to reflect on ourselves about how we treat those that are different around us. Maybe that's something that we can reflect in the conversation we have. Right, we'll take a very quick break. When we come back, as I said, we'll talk to Idreace and we'll take some of your comments and questions on the other side of these important messages. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV. We're talking to Idreace Mohammed, the disability rights activist who is not sitting back, is taking a stance to make sure that gyms in Blackburn are disabled access, has disabled access, and that people like him are not treated any differently from the rest of us. And I suppose that final point which he talked about, and maybe we can reflect on this throughout the rest of the program, is that we, able people, as whatever description you want to describe yourself, need to reflect on ourselves and our approach as well. Now, we're taking your calls on 01924231003. You can get in touch with us on our social media handle, British Muslim TV. As I said, Idreace Mohammed is joining us. He's also been supported by Wasim Khan, his brother-in-law as well, and very close friend. Now, before the break, Idreace, we talked about services for disabled people in Blackburn. When did you start using a gym and how was that first experience?
So, like I said before, I moved out when I was 18. So I started the gym. I was 18. So I was going to the gym when I liked it, but for some equipment I couldn't use. So I went home to research if I can find a gym that's suitable for me. I couldn't find any. So I thought, why not open my own? But I was a bit older now, and I thought it's time to help other people keep fit.
Go ahead, Wasim.
Basically, what he wants to do is inspire people like him, or even able-bodied people with different mental issues or any other issues, to go on and be confident and be able to go to the gym and not feel like they're being watched by everybody.
Yeah, it's having those safe spaces where they can just be themselves and having that freedom. This is from Ahmed, who is in London. He says, as a disabled person, I still encounter problems accessing things like gyms, even public transport and other buildings that I tend to go into, let alone the support that I need at home with my family, enjoying time with my friends. I wish you well, Idreace, and you're an inspiration. That's from Ahmed, sending us a message on from London. I mean, that's really important, isn't it? You've decided to do this fundraiser. You just give us a bit more detail before the break, where it's not £20,000 for a gym. It's the prep work that needs to be done. Just set out what it is that is included in this fundraiser.
Basically, this fundraiser entitles him to run a pilot scheme in other gyms to see how it would work in his gym. That's the first step they've said to try and do before you can open your own gym. So he wants to pilot the scheme first and see how popular it is, then basically turn it into a proper gym.
Yeah, and so that takes £20,000, which you've set up as a fundraiser. Why is it the local council not providing this extra resource? Surely they would want to do something for their disabled citizens?
Yeah, basically he contacted Princess Trust, and they said the maximum amount they can give is £1,000, and that won't really do much for his dream that he wants to do.
Yeah, okay. How's the support been from the community at the moment, Idreace?
We've not really got it out there in the community. It's been Facebook and Snapchat or TikTok, but it's not achieved many views yet. But he's contacted one singer, Mas Bonafide, who's going to post it for him. And also, Amir Khan's good friend said he would also get Amir Khan to look at it as well.
Well, we will definitely post it on our social media as well. And we'll talk during the break. I've got some contacts locally with journalists that can put you in touch so we can get the story out there to as many people as possible. You met the MP, Kate Holland, who's the MP for Blackburn. How was that for you, and what was she saying in regards to your campaign?
She was very motivating towards it, but it wasn't no solid, go here and do this, or go here and get this in writing, or go here and try to get fundraising. There was no plan she put out for us. So it was basically all this stuff he's doing has been him doing it only. I've been helping him along the way, but it's all his brain behind all this.
Yeah. Because that's the amazing thing. I mean, you know, if you don't know the system, you don't know where to go, but yet you're still determined to continue on this path, and that's quite inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got a smile. Alhamdulillah, man. And certainly, I mean, local councillors, have you been in touch with them? Is there something that can be done?
We thought through Kay Holland it might be the best option, but she's not really put us on to anybody else to go and take it further. Okay. Well,
I as I said, I know quite a few local councillors, and maybe we can get them on to a future programme so you can talk to them directly. Councillors as well. We know the leader, the council is Phil Riley, so we can do something, because I think it's really important, isn't it, that we provide services for disabled citizens who are as equal, you know, rights as anybody else. Wouldn't you agree, Idreace?
In Islam, what it is, we shouldn't judge nobody. We've got no right to judge nobody. Only Allah can judge somebody. So when he goes to the gym, or he goes shopping, or he goes out, and he's getting looked at by many people, especially Asian people, and getting the comments that we usually get in the Asian community, it kind of hurts him a bit, and it makes his whole day go not the way he wants it to go.
Yeah, and how can people find out more about the fundraiser? Where can they go and look?
It's on his Facebook. If you go on Idreace Mohammed on Facebook, the link will be there.
Okay. Well, I promised Idreace I will share it on my social media as well, so that people can learn about that. And if there's anything else that we can do here at British Muslim TV, please stay in touch, and we'll try to contact the local councillors and see what can happen.
Thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Idreace Mohammed. Sadly, we've reached the end of our time together. Can I thank you so much for joining us, and many thanks also to you, Wasim, joining us, and let me wish you the best for the campaign. As promised, we'll come back to this, and we'll try to get some of the local leaders in a discussion about how we do that. That was Idreace Mohammed from the town of Blackburn in Lancashire, telling us about the campaign for a disabled gym. Promise, as I said, we will re-look at the issues in the week to come. But actually, I want to use the time that we have left to think about what is it that we in the rest of society need to do to change our ways. Because the reality is, if you go into our takeaways, our supermarkets, our halal butchers, you go into the masajids, you go into the Islamic centers, community centers, how disabled friendly are our institutions and buildings? I think that's the starting point. That in itself is a form of discrimination. That we don't even recognize that there is an issue unless somebody like Idreace comes forward and has to do a campaign to be able to do something for disabled people. A couple of the profound things that we heard from him tonight. The first, which hasn't shocked me, but it has really shocked me. So I think there's a contradiction in that. It has, in how we judge people, how we look at people, and then we pass judgment on them. And he said something really beautiful about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating all of us in a different form. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also given us the ability to be kind to a fellow human being. Based on his experience, that's not happening. We as a community are too quick to sit and stare at somebody because they happen to be in a wheelchair. And rather than encourage him and say, that's a great thing that you're doing there. That's great that you've getting out of your house, and despite your disability, despite the wheelchair, that you want to do your fitness. You want to make a difference. Surely we as a community can do better. Surely we as a community can say to Idreace and all disabled people like him that we'll make sure that our institutions and our mosques and Islamic centers and businesses, community centers, voluntary sector organizations, that any building that we use is disabled access, has disabled access, that we welcome disabled people into these environment. And that when we do welcome them, that we respect their space. We respect the right for them to have a safe space so that they can also do the things that they want to do within the community. That's the least we can do. And tonight, if you're watching this and you've watched the interview from Idreace and you've been inspired, as I've been, and everybody here at British Muslim TV has been by this campaign, we should be thinking about what is it that we can do to help Idreace and his campaign. We promise we'll share the social media campaign where you can log on and see the fundraiser that he is trying to do, and look at imaginative ways in which you can support him. Wherever you are in the country, around the world. This is a just cause, and I hope that you listen to the story and reflect on that. All of us. It's a lesson for all of us, whatever our background, wherever we live, whatever things that we do, about how we treat those that are different to us. And if you want to go back to the prophetic tradition, because that's who we are, that's our identity. We describe ourselves as followers of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. And that the prophetic way would not be to judge. The Prophet ﷺ would have embraced Idreace, would have encouraged Idreace, would have made sure that the services that are provided from within our communities and organizations and state level were inclusive, so that people like Idreace and many other disabled wheelchair users do get that access. If we can hope, if we can dream, so can disabled people. And thank you so much for your comments and support that we've had for this. As promised, I do know, spent a lot of time in Blackburn over the years when I was broadcasting on another channel. So I do know lots of counsellors. I do know lots of people in Blackburn. And I promise you, Idreace, if you're still watching, we'll make sure that we try to get your fundraiser moving at a quicker pace than it is doing. And inshallah, we'll do that. Right. We're going to take a break very, very shortly. When we come back, we head to the city of Sheffield. It's known as the City of Steel. Beautiful city, beautiful people. We'll be talking to our regular contributor on the show, broadcaster Mohammed Shafaqat, about his return to the radio airwaves and what now for Imran Khan and what is happening in Pakistan. Join us on the other side of these very important messages. I promise you it'll be brief. We'll be back very shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, live from our studios in Wakefield. We're taking your calls now on 01924 231 083 or get in touch with us on our social media handle at British Muslim TV. Now let's move on to our next topic and guest. The city of Sheffield is known as the Steel City and has a strong and vibrant community. One of its most prominent voices in the local media is Mohammed Shafaqat. He's recently returned to the radio airwaves with Link FM. He takes a keen interest in Pakistani politics and is closely following events since the former Prime Minister Imran Khan was ousted in April 2022. So what now for Pakistan and Imran Khan? I'm pleased to say Mohammed Shafaqat joining us live on British Muslim TV from the city of Sheffield in South Yorkshire, just up the road from here in Wakefield. Firstly, Shafaqat, great to have you back on the show and thank you so much for giving us so much time. How are you and how's the family?
Wa alaikum salam, and nice to be back on British Muslim TV after not too long, and it's always a pleasure to be on your fantastic show. Always follow your show, and you and wherever you are, you're mashallah asset of our community and do great work on the media. And all's good. I've been busy.
You've been busy with a family wedding as well, so congratulations. I think your son got married.
Yeah, my son got married in.
I didn't think you were that old. Honestly, I'm not saying this to be nice to you. Actually, when I saw the pictures on Facebook, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize you had children at the age of being able to get married. So take it as a compliment.
Mashallah. Yeah, exactly. He's 25.
Mashallah.
And it was in June. So obviously, before the wedding, as you know, Asian weddings are quite hectic.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So I'm glad it's over. But mashallah, congratulations to him and my wonderful daughter-in-law Yusra. She's from Birmingham. Mashallah,
we won't hold that against her.
No.
We won't hold that against her. I mean, come on, Birmingham's Birmingham, isn't it?
Yeah. So it gives me an excuse to go back to Birmingham because I used to go a lot in the early days, and then I stopped going. But now I've got an excuse. I'll be going next week as well to see his in-laws, and they're a lovely family. So may Allah bless them with a lot of happiness.
I mean, Ya Rab, and best wishes to them as well from all of us. Now, you recently returned to the airwaves, radio airwaves, should I say? You've gone back with a show on Link FM. Tell us about your return and why you chose the need to come.
I'll be honest with you. I was doing regular shows on various radio stations, and around 2019, my mom wasn't well, so I just took a break. I took a break from that for a short while, and then that short while became a bit longer than I thought. It's sometimes when you're out of the picture, I needed that break just to refresh myself. I did a lot of political current affairs shows, hard-hitting shows with my great colleague Mohammed Shafaqat. And then now, recently, a new management took over Link FM, and Faisal Sultani Saab requested that I come back on the airwaves and do a current affairs show again, which is my real forte. This is what I really enjoy, current affairs. So he asked me a couple of times, and I couldn't refuse him. It was very nice of him, and new show started 2-3 weeks ago. We're just getting back into the pace of it. Current affairs, local, national, international stories we cover. But I'm trying to focus mainly on the local issues as well. And then, of course, international, there's so much going on. And then the latter half of the show is mainly focused on Pakistan. But we want to do something where we can discuss various issues affecting the Asian British communities here, the Muslim communities in the UK, be it teenagers, be it marriages, brotherly system, and then local politics, and then international, looking at the international angles from a local viewpoint. So it's fun to be back in the hot seat, and I'm just getting my back in the rhythm again. So inshallah, once I get into the rhythm, it should be fun. I enjoy radio, it's a passion.
Yeah, I think, I mean, lots of people who do TV like me, there's something particularly special about radio. You know, I've certainly done radio over many, many years as well. It's completely different experience.
Yeah, Shafiq, radio is, as you know, when you're traveling in your cars, the ladies in the kitchen, home, is something that you can relate to. Some of the, obviously, the local radio presenters are from that community. We live in this community, so we know the issues that affect the local communities. And I think radio, despite social media becoming so powerful now, I mean, look at some of the YouTubers and the TikTokers, and they're household names now. But I still enjoy radio, and because when I left for the last year and a half, 2 years, people were meeting me in the streets and at the petrol stations, at the swimming pool, at the gym, anywhere. I need to go to gym more. I need to get that in as well. But they were meeting me and they were saying, they were like upset with me. They said, "Why are you off the air? We've not heard you for such a long time." And it's the people, you know, it's they, the ones that we do it for. You know, they can relate to us, and they give us a lot of respect, and you know, and they all you know, back us up when we need. So I think we owe it to them. And I'm at that stage of my life now where I do it just for the passion and to give something back to the community, and try to now bring out some of the topics that we really need to talk about, because there's a lot of issues that we face, and you know, sometimes we sweep things under the carpet. But people like yourself and Kamran Pirzada and others who've been leading the way, and we need to follow your footsteps. That, you know, we need to talk about topics, but we need to talk about solutions as well.
Yeah, it's a community radio station which broadcasts on 96.7 FM in the Sheffield city area. But you can also listen to it, as I often do. Have been a guest on it many times on your show as well.
I need to get you back on now.
Over the years, I miss being interviewed by you. We could switch roles, couldn't we?
Yeah, definitely, mashallah. Yeah. I'll always welcome you on. We've gone back a long way, Shafiq, and you've always been supportive. And
the relationships are very much mutual. It's utmost respect for you.
Both Man United fans, and let's not talk about Man United at the moment. We're struggling there. We'll go there.
Yeah, well, definitely, and I think because people respect you in your community, people want to listen to what you've got to say. What's the response been since you're back on air?
It's been positive. Lots of messages, and those the ones that were upset with me, they've seen me and
they're forgiving you, yeah.
So yeah, it's been good, and the management has been very helpful. They've been very, very supportive. You know, they've given me a free hand. It's all about trust in media. I've been in the media for nearly 30 years, started with the BBC and then different radio stations. I was off air for a short time, then came back on various community radio stations. So, but it's always nice when your management and your team back you up and they trust you that you can handle the hard topics. And that's very important for a radio presenter, because you need a free hand there where you can go with the flow. And we know the red lines, we know the Ofcom rules, so we know which are the topics and where the red lines should be drawn. So that's very important as well. But all thanks to my management, especially Faisal Sultani.
Yeah, well, you did a fantastic job, and it's great to have you back on the airwaves. Let's just move on. Let's talk about Pakistan. What do you make of how politics has developed since the last time we spoke?
Well, that's a question. That's a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
I think we need
I've got nothing else to do. Can stay on air till midnight. James can sort you out.
I'm sure you've got another guest lined up. So what the thing is, Shafiq, since we last talked, Imran Khan was in power.
Yeah.
Things were moving steady, slowly, not perfect. I was in Pakistan in March, April, when this all vote of no confidence came, and then it all kicked off. And within that 3 months, 4 months now, as you can see, things are really, really a crisis point at the moment. You know, it's 75th anniversary of Pakistan on the 14th of August, and where do we stand today? You know, it's quite sad to see what's happening in Pakistan. I'm a big fan of Imran Khan, but even during his tenure, he was saying that my hands were tied, and then before him, Nawaz Sharif was complaining that I was ousted by default, and now Shehbaz Sharif is the favorite in Pakistan. This merry-go-round, this musical chairs needs to stop in Pakistan, and a lot of people are really concerned how at one time the Imran Khan was the golden boy and the Darna, and 2014 onwards, he was, you know, the future, the main man.
What went wrong?
Sorry?
What went wrong?
I think what happened was it was a fallout between the military establishment around October time last year on the notification of the DGI ISI chief, who was the main agency in Pakistan, spy agency. And I think because Imran Khan wanted to continue with General Faiz Hamid, saying that because of the movement of the American soldiers from Pakistan and Faiz Hamid's knowledge and the handling of that situation, let's leave him for another 6 months. General Bajwa wasn't happy with this, and so they had a bit of a fallout. And the DGISI's notification, Imran Khan was refusing to sign it for a week or so. I think that started the ball rolling. I think the Chief of Army Staff maybe felt threatened that maybe he might get rid of me as well. So behind the scenes, these sort of things happening. Then Imran Khan talks about this conspiracy and Donald Lu and this letter. I'm not sure what's the facts behind that. We've never seen that letter, but that's why he said that this investigation started around 6 months and he ended in March.
But many months, we're just coming close to our break. I just want to get one more question in before we go for that. But one thing that's happened since then have been by-elections in the Punjab province provincial assembly. 20 seats. PTI took 5, was it?
15.
Sorry. PTI took 15, and the New League took 4, and an independent took 1. And what do you make of that landslide? And what does that indicate about what might be happening on the horizon if the people are given the choice?
That's what really rattled the cage, really, because the establishment, they thought Imran Khan's popularity graph was very low. He's gone out of the picture, but the population, the public, really stood with him. The spontaneous people coming out in his support, because he's the first prime minister was not really actually taken out for corruption. It was more to do with, they were saying that IMF is not cooperating with IMF and these kind of things. But so once they got rid of him now, and the situation deteriorated very, very quickly. So this landslide victory he got, although these were already PTI seats, really put the cat amongst the pigeons, where they thought, hang on, this guy's still popular. The turnout was huge in Punjab, and he won 15, which they predicted maybe 8 to 9 seats. He won 15 seats, which was quite shocking, and which helped him get his own chief minister, Pervez Ali, who's alliance with PTI, Pakistan Muslim League Gulf Group, back into the chief minister's seat. So the establishment and the other players thought Khan's popularity is still there now. Now there's a new ideas happening in Pakistan. They were talking about election. The government, Shahbaz Sharif, was struggling, but slowly they are stabilizing as well. IMF has promised their loans are coming through very soon, and the dollar's stabilizing. The Karachi Stock Exchange is going back up, and Imran Khan wanted elections ASAP, maybe by October. But the way it's looking now, I think they don't want elections till next year now.
Yeah. Well, we'll develop this discussion very, very shortly. Mohammed Shafaqat is going to be staying with us. We'll take a very quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation, but also open the lines if you've got any comments or questions. 01924 231 083. Join us on the other side of these very short messages. We'll be back very shortly. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. I told you it was going to be quick. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, on British Muslim TV. From our studios in Wakefield, we're taking your calls now on 01924 231 083. Get in touch with us on social media handle British Muslim TV. We're having an exclusive conversation with the broadcaster Mohammed Shafaqat, who's joining us live from Sheffield. Brother Shafaqat, before the break, we talked about the by-elections in Punjab. Imran Khan has just in the last few days moved his big rally that he was supposed to be having in Islamabad. Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, the party of Saad Rizvi, wanted to have it in the same venue. There's a concern that there would have been some sort of clash and possible violence, God forbid. What do you make of Imran Khan's decision to move it to Lahore, and what impact do you think this will have on his movement?
I think, it's important that he's done that, because it's quite fascinating that Tehreek-e-Labbaik have been off the radar for quite a long time, and all of a sudden they want their protest on the same day, on the 13th, and definitely that could have been a quite dangerous scenario. I don't know, those who play in the game, this hybrid warfare we talk about in Pakistan is in full play at the moment. These are dangerous times for Pakistan. Pakistan is a hostile neighborhood. Pakistan is in a region that can ignite any time. This drone attack in Afghanistan, the Taliban are not happy with Pakistan. The American envoy is touring the borders of Pakistan. Where does Pakistan stand today? Who are these people who are playing this game with the country 75 years? We do Independence Day every year, but really today we're in a similar situation to 1971, some people are saying. You know, we've had a checkered history of the deep state and the military establishment playing, on one side they give press conferences, they say we're not part of the politics, stop dragging us into the political arena. But on the other side, there is no doubt that maneuvering and behind the scenes things are happening. It happened against Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, it happened against Fatima Jinnah. The sister of Quaid-e-Azam was banned from politics in the time of Ayub, and then Zia-ul-Haq's time. Then we talked about Musharraf, he came, he took out Nawaz Sharif as sitting prime minister. No prime minister of Pakistan on record has completed their tenure for 5 years. Why not? Why do we have 3 years, 4 years, 2 years? Even people like Imran Khan, who we thought then the military were on one page, all of a sudden, when they realize that, you know, he's trying to become more independent on foreign policy, this Russian visit.
But I'm just going to let's just explore that. Do you think there was a mistake on the part of Imran Khan because he was governing as if he had a majority, and he didn't have a majority? He had to rely on the smaller parties, and they possibly held him to ransom, as in terms of policy terms we're talking about.
Every leader, Shafiq, has flaws. You know, Imran Khan is a good man. People of Pakistan know he's honest and he's loyal to the state. Today, he's been portrayed for treason charges maybe soon, and some of his party members. It's shocking. First, Nawaz Sharif was done for that, and then even look at Benazir was regarded as security risk, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Imran Khan, one thing with him at the moment, until the stakeholders, until these politicians can sit together and try to sort something out collectively, the establishment and the military establishment is too strong, and they will always play a part in Pakistani politics. This is the problem with Imran Khan, one which I disagree with him, where he says, I will not sit with anybody, I will not talk to anybody. Well, even if there's war, even if there's enmity between anybody, if you look at the IRA situation in the UK, if you look at the Kashmir dispute, the parties, the Kashmiris, first and foremost, India, Pakistan, everybody has to sit around the table and solve this with the consent of the Kashmiri people. Otherwise, look, 75 years, look at the Palestine issue. Why is it not being solved 70 years or plus? Why? Because if third parties are not allowed to sit and negotiate, the Muslim world can play a part between India and Pakistan as well. But we're not, because they are beneficiaries. There are people who benefit for the turmoil. 75 years on, we're still going to IMF. For 1.2 billion, we've sold our soul. We've sold our soul. I'm afraid to say Pakistan is being played, and this is not anybody's virasat. Pakistan belongs to 220 million people. Pakistan is a vibrant country. Pakistan has huge potential. Pakistan's tourism went 400% up, local tourism. Pakistan's GDP was going to grow 6% this year. Pakistan's exports were growing. Pakistan's was better. Everything was okay, apart from this IMF situation. The tough decisions, let Imran Khan make them. If he's not capable, let the people reject him. Let him be taken out by the people, by the vote. On one side, you have these bogus elections, then you rig them, then you give soft alliances to people like the Pakistan Muslim League Gulf Group, who jump ship whenever they want. Then you got the likes of Sheikh Rashid and others who can, they're part of the establishment. Chaudhry Ansar. There's certain people who are.
But Sheikh Rashid's been very loyal to Imran Khan in all these years.
Well, but they play both sides of the wicket. If tomorrow the military dictatorship took over, if there's martial law, I can assure you Sheikh Rashid will be their spokesman. So we really, this game needs to stop. Every Pakistani, look at the polarization. Look at the debates on social media. Look at the disagreements between PTI and
so sometimes the language can be quite testy.
And the military as well, they get a tough time on social media, and they say, and it's sad to see. We don't want to see that. And this Shabazz Gill PTI, some of the comments he made were out of order. There are red lines. You shouldn't cross red lines. But who hasn't? In the past, Nawaz Sharif has openly named people. Other people are. Imran Khan is using the name neutrals. First, he was Khalai Makhluk. Why are you changing names? Either come openly or stop this game, because look, Pakistan is suffering today.
Okay.
If there is Pakistan, they will be in power. If there's no Pakistan, what are they going to rule over?
Yeah. And how do you assess the coalition government? It's led by Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif of Pakistan Muslim League Noon, and he's joined by the Pakistan People's Party and MQM, some of the other smaller parties, and the coalition of about, I think, is it 11 parties, 12 parties together? How do you assess their record in government since they took office?
Their record, I mean, they've only had 2-3 months. They've been put in such a difficult situation with the IMF, and the petrol prices in Pakistan have gone high. Inflation is double-digit or triple-digit now. So they're in a difficult situation. First, Nawaz Sharif was the Ladla, then it was Imran Khan, now Shahbaz Sharif, next is Bilawal Bhutto. That's what I'm saying. So even though Shahbaz Sharif is...
So you think Bilawal Bhutto will win the next election?
Anything is possible in Pakistan now. It seems to be there's a like I said to you initially, that there's like a musical chairs. So this game of thorns has to stop in Pakistan, and Shahbaz Sharif is a dead man walking, because if elections were tomorrow, Imran Khan definitely will get a decent majority, or maybe 2/3. His popularity graph is shot up high. He has to be very careful. He has to choose his words very, very carefully. Today he was saying, I can lock down the whole of Pakistan, but I won't, because the situation is not good. But at the moment, Pakistan is in dire need of stability. Pakistan is in dire need of cool heads, somebody behind the scenes to get these people together and say, calm down, all the stakeholders, sit around the table and calm the temperature. Because I'm telling you, they're all to blame. I blame the politicians who keep running to the establishment. When they take them out, they complain as well. Yeah. Either you go with them, you can't hunt with the hounds and run with the hares. It has to be one or the other.
Because I think you made a very important point there. Criticism of the PTI, Imran Khan's party, that we're refusing to sit down with the coalition parties who are in power now to discuss elections and the date of an election and all of that. And that seems to be lost. It just seems to be claim after counterclaim, insult after insult.
Now, you look at this a few years back, all the Pakistan Muslim League, the heads of certain TV stations were all locked up. Today, who's locked up? Shahbaz Gill, Asad Umar, and these guys are getting threats now. Zulfi Bukhari might be picked up. Imran Khan might be arrested. Look how things have changed. Within 3 or 4 months, Imran Khan is the bad guy and Shahbaz Sharif is the good guy. Nawaz Sharif, why is Nawaz Sharif, the ex-Prime Minister, 3 times, still in London? Why is he not going to Pakistan? His brother's the Prime Minister of Pakistan. What's the worry when your brother's the Prime Minister?
I'm sure if he was here, it's he's under medical treatment and his doctors have not given him permission to leave.
It's quite healthy to me now, but the reason is Nawaz Sharif has learned, Imran Khan is learning that, Nawaz Sharif still doesn't trust the judiciary and what can happen to him. Maybe his brother might be out of power by the time he lands there. So, we've had them Darne, we had Dr. Tarun Qadri Saab, we had Imran Khan, who was given the information about Shahbaz Sharif's Hudaybiyah paper mills, who was Maqsood Chaprasi, and who were all these people with the accounts. Today, he's the Prime Minister. 24 people of the cabinet are on trial, were on trial. Today, they're running the government, and this is not on. And I blame myself and the rest of the Pakistani community here and there who support and not talk about this system. When it suits Imran Khan, we say, well, everybody's fine. When Imran Khan's out of power, we say these are the bad guys. When Nawaz Sharif was naming and shaming people, we said Nawaz Sharif is the bad guy. This game is being played very cleverly and is put Pakistani against Pakistani, division, polarization, and somebody else is benefiting, especially the international lobbies. They don't want to see independent.
Yeah, and I was just
in power.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful point you say. It's up to all those politicians and political parties to lower the temperature. When do you think we're going to get elections, and what's going to happen? Who do you predict is going to win those elections?
I think the elections is the only solution. Whoever needs to rule that country needs to have 5 years full mandate, free and fair elections in Pakistan. But under this current system, the ECP is not trusted by PTI, one of the most popular parties in Pakistan. So how are we going to go forward? Imran Khan is after the ECP head. So how is he going to sit down with him? He's refusing to sit down with the opposition. The opposition is enjoying their perks at the moment. But if there is election today, Imran Khan, I think, would win. PTI would win. But the opposition, the government want to build time, give relief to the public, bring down the utility prices so they can go back to the public and say, look, we fixed it. We had tough decisions to make. We made them. So it's all about the cat and mouse game. But I think at the moment, maybe now elections could be next year. But anything is possible in Pakistan. By the time you do the next program, Shahbaz Sharif could be out of power as well. So anything can happen at the moment, and it's a sad state of affairs.
And who would win that election, do you think?
I think Imran Khan. If it was in October, I think the PTI would win, and whoever wins needs a 2/3 majority. These alliances or their strings are somewhere else being pulled by others. And if you got alliances, you got no chance to run Pakistan. There is no chance you're going to run that country or make. And the biggest problem is Pakistan needs to have a free foreign policy. Nawaz Sharif didn't have a foreign minister. Can you believe that? For 5 years. And Imran Khan, soon as he started moving towards Russia, China is now all over the friend. Soon as the Russian and this new bloc was being thought of, China, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and then guess what happened? We're back in the American camp. Uncle Sam arrived, and the dollars are coming as well, and the drones have started.
Well,
the terrorists.
I'm sure the U.S. government. I'm sure the U.S. government would disagree with that characterization. Mohammed Shafaqat, thank you. We've reached the end of our time together. I really enjoyed that. Let's do it again sometime sooner. Thank you so much. That was the broadcaster Mohammed Shafaqat joining us live from Sheffield, and you can hear his latest show on the Lick FM website or on 97.6, I think it is, in Sheffield and surrounding areas. Right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we're going to head to London and talk to the journalist Taj Ali about South Asian political activism in the 60s and 70s, his research, the interviews he's done, and how you can help in that research. Join us on the other side of these very important but brief messages. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. I told you it was going to be brief. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV from our studios here in Wakefield. Now, we're on the 96th episode. In 4 episodes' time, we would have hit our 100th episode. Who would have thought we would have hit this milestone? How should we celebrate it? I've been talking to my producer, and that silence is what happens every time I say, let's do something, and it's complete silence. Anyway, if you know how we should celebrate our 100th episode, please do let me know. You can get in touch with us on social media, British Muslim TV, or you can get in touch with me on social media, Shafiq UK. Right, let's move on to the programme and to our final topic. We're taking your calls on 01924 231 083. And get in touch with us on social media as well, as I said, British Muslim TV. Right, let's move on to the next guest and topic. Now, for that early generation of South Asians who came to the UK in the 60s and 70s, it was a time of great challenges and yet hope. There was, how do you adapt to a new country and a culture and being so far away from their families, their culture and their friends? Now, this generation led the fight against racism, and their activism in those early years changed the political and cultural landscape of the United Kingdom. And it led to the very first introduction of legislation against racism, discrimination and harassment in the Race Relations Act, which is still in force so many years later. Now, what can we learn from that early generation? And how can we inspire today's generation of South Asian activists into getting political activism and achieve the same success? It's also South Asian Heritage Month, which finishes on the 17th of August, which is next Wednesday. Now, Taj Ali, you will know him because he's been on my program before. He's a UK-based journalist based in London. He's currently researching this political activism and from the period of the 60s and 70s. And he's looking to interview to learn more about the early generation of South Asians and political activism. I'm going to talk to him about his research, but also some of the stories that he's been able to find out. And then there'll be a way for you at home to get in touch with him so that you can also share your experience. Is it your experience or your parents or your grandparents? Pleased to say Taj Ali joining us live on British Muslim TV from the City of London. Taj, great to have you back on the show. You've been very, very busy, as I can tell from social media. Tell us a bit about some of the things you've been involved in since the last time you were on the show.
Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, thanks for having me again on the show. So yeah, a few months ago, I started a public history project on British South Asian history. So I'd studied history and politics at university And one of the things that I thought was lacking, especially when we look at anti-racist history, is actually the history of communities resisting racism themselves. We heard a lot about sort of white organizations, the Anti-Nazi League. We heard about protest movements, but there was a lot of organizing in communities. And I realized that that was something that was lacking in the historiography. I was born and bred in Luton. And I heard a lot of stories from my elders about how they resisted the National Front in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of this history is basically oral history. It's not been documented anywhere. It's not been archived. So for me, I think it's really important to capture that history and crucially learn from it as well. So I've started doing some research looking into the various movements, like the Asian youth movements, for instance, who are a group of young people in the Asian communities in Luton, Bradford, Birmingham, Manchester, who organized against the National Front. They campaigned against racist immigration legislation. And, that's such a rich tradition in our communities. And it's important that we highlight it and we learn from it.
Yeah, because when we look at the early generation of South Asians, particularly in the 60s and 70s, my father's generation who came here in the early 60s, what do we learn about that political activism?
I think you have to look at that period in time. It's really important to remember that, as Asians migrating to Britain, they faced a hostile environment. Racism was everywhere. And I'm not just talking about overt racism. In the police force, there was widespread racism. There was housing discrimination. Even kids going to school faced racism from their peers, from their teachers. So it was everywhere around them, and it was something you can't really avoid. And that's why there was a necessity to act. And I think, that lack of institutional support shaped the activism of that earlier generation. It was very much grassroots. The anti-racist struggle was rooted in communities. It was about defending mosques, defending shops, defending homes. So really and truly, I think, it was a very difficult period. It wasn't easy to organize, but there was also a necessity to organize.
Yeah. And they were in a country that they didn't really know. They suffered racism, as you said, yet still, for some of them, they were still became activists. And, whilst we're just sorting out those connection issues, let's just remind you, my father came here in the 60s. He was part of the pioneer generation, particularly for that period. There was no Muslim community. There was no essence. Halal meat shops. There were no mosques. People didn't know when their month of Ramadan came or when it was Eid. It was only when they got a letter back home from home. Their parents would send a letter and they would know it had been Ramadan or Eid. It's a pioneer generation. And despite all of that, they understood that they had to fight for something. Taj, you back, apologies for the technical difficulties there. But just sharing my father's experience, he came in the 60s. He used to work during the day. Work at night, did a night shift in the mills. And then he would teach kids, do the community activism. And there was lots of people like him on the political spectrum who helped us get to kind of exposing racism.
Yeah, I think the other thing to remember is, I live in Luton right now, and a lot of the roads that I walk through, my dad wouldn't have been able to walk through in his day and age. So, in the factories, they had the worst shifts, they had the worst conditions. A lot of the activism actually took place in the factories. They faced racism not just from their colleagues, they didn't just face racism from the bosses, but also within the trade union movement. It was very difficult for Asian workers to organize, and they still did it. They organized through the Indian Workers Association, the Pakistani Workers Association, the Kashmiri Workers Association. And one thing that I found very fascinating was actually they were very powerful organizations. I was reading about the Indian Workers Association. In Southall in the 60s, they say that at least half the Punjabi population were members of the Indian Workers Association. These organizations were primarily working class organizations. And the workplaces were actually quite frightened of this because they were able to organize across the country. They were able to mobilize the Indian workforce. And even in the Daily Telegraph in the 60s, they were talking about how, in terms of votes for political parties, that political candidates had to take them seriously. The Indian Workers Association would literally grill Labour MPs on their stance on immigration. The votes weren't handed lightly. So I think, if you contrast to today, I would argue that they were even more organized in the 60s and 70s than they are today.
Yeah, they were more organised. We're probably coming, I don't know how long we've got till the break, about 3 minutes. There was a significant group that was set up called the Asian Youth Movement. And that was formed across towns and cities, and that was in response to racist attacks and murders that was going on. And that, as you said, came from the Indian and Pakistani, but they merged themselves together despite the difference that you have between India and Pakistan on global politics and in the Indian subcontinent. They were able to put those differences aside and South Asians uniting to defend each other's community. That's powerful.
Yeah, I think, you know, there was the common oppression. I think when you look at the racial slurs, it didn't matter if you were Indian, Bangladeshi, even, you know, African Caribbean people were being called the P word. And likewise, the N word was being used against Pakistanis. So they had this commonality of oppression. And that's why they organized on that basis that we as people of color in the UK are being attacked on the streets. We are being deported. We're facing racism. And the Asian youth movements were a lot more radical than a lot of the earlier movements. And this was primarily because we've seen a rise in murders. You know, Taj Ali was killed in East London. Gurdeep Singh Chadha was killed in Southall. And it was against that backdrop of racist murders, people literally fighting for their lives and having no hope in the police force, that the Asian youth movements primarily focused on self-defense. They would sit with families in housing estates that were being attacked. They would fight back physically against the National Front as well. And you have to situate that in that wider context of a lack of institutional support. They were very much anti-imperialist as well, I have to add, in their outlook. You know, they united different struggles. They supported the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. They supported the Palestinian struggle. At this time, there was a massive Irish struggle, and they built those coalitions. And I think there was this sense of uniting different communities, and that's very prominent when you read about these organizations.
Yeah, it's a profound, powerful story. I know, Taj, you're going to stay with us, and we're going to explore this in a lot more detail with you. But as again, if you want to share your thoughts on this, please do get in touch with us, 01924 231083. You can get in touch with us on social media. The handle is on British Muslim TV. I've got a brainwave there. So, Taj, you kind of doing this paper, you're doing this research. Why did you choose South Asian political activism? And what do you want to learn from that period?
I think firstly, being born and bred in Luton, there was obviously learning the histories from the older generation, from my parents, that weren't documented anywhere. And also I was quite politicized, I have to say, by the rise of Islamophobia, by the English Defence League, for instance, forming in my hometown. You know, when I was 11 years old, I was told not to go into the town centre because the English Defence League were in town. And we could see that tension in the communities. And just hearing from some of the elders, they were saying, well, this is nothing new. You know, we went through this in the 70s and 80s. So I was fascinated by it. I think the other thing that's quite unfortunate is a lot of the people involved in anti-racist activism in the 70s, in the 60s have passed away during COVID. And it's really important that we document that history, we learn from them, we preserve that history, because ultimately it's our heritage. I think it's something to be proud of, and I find it quite inspiring. And a lot of my peers, by the way, who aren't necessarily political, who don't really follow politics, they find this very, very interesting. So I think there's a massive demand for capturing this history.
Yeah, that's so important. And I get a sense of, you've interviewed several people. What did you learn about their lived experience, and what sort of message? Because we were just talking during the break about that generation, quite suspicious of journalists, maybe. Not willing to want to, you know, be as outspoken or honest about their experience and what they were involved in.
I think you have to understand that for them, you know, the period they lived in, they never had institutional support. They never had people on their side. And unfortunately, you know, even the history and the documentation of their history is being quite sanitized. It's censored the bits that are a bit awkward, you know, the anti-imperialist history, the fact that they were pro-Palestinian, they supported the Irish struggles, they were willing to defend communities by any means necessary. These are things that we have to understand.
So we're going to go for a break. I've been told it's going to be very, very brief. I'll be seeing you very, very shortly. What a fantastic show it's been tonight. Absolutely awesome. And it's not finished yet. We've got one more segment to do. And we're joined by the journalist Taj Ali, who's having a fascinating focus on South Asian political activism.
And I can understand why sometimes there is a suspicion. And I faced it myself, you know, because that is how they lived. They never had the support. I do think, you know, from all the activists I've spoken to, every single activist that I've interviewed has said the same thing, that they believe that our communities have come complacent. You know, we've stopped taking the fight to the racists. We've stopped organizing in communities because it might not be in our faces anymore. And I think that's something that's often emphasized by a lot of the people I speak to, is the fact that this isn't something that's the end chapter of a book. You know, there's still a struggle going on. We're still fighting racism, institutional racism. And I think that's something that I'm trying to emphasize in my research, is not just capturing their experience, but actually saying, well, what lessons do you have for the younger generation? What can we take from that history as well?
Yeah, and how can we then apply what we learn from that generation to our lives? Because some of us, maybe, I don't know, talk about that period and think it's no longer relevant, but your research suggests that it is still as relevant now for our generation.
Yeah, I think the other thing we have to ask is, why did those movements fracture? Why aren't the Asian youth movement still a thing? Why isn't the Indian Workers Association as powerful as it once was? Obviously, we have changes in our socioeconomic status, but also a lot of the activists said to me, we've become divided as communities, you know, on religions, on ethnic lines, but also funding, the way funding has come into communities, and activists have been co-opted. So they stopped being radical in their political outlook. When they take state funding, they're less critical of the state. And a lot of the Asian youth movements witnessed that in real time. Mukhtar Dar, for instance, someone I interviewed who set up the Sheffield Asian Youth Movement, had a very brilliant analogy about this. And he said, they smash your kneecaps and then they give you grants in the form of crutches to stand up with, you know, and that was how he tried to illustrate how the difference between radical anti-racist activism, which is rooted in communities, and some of the stuff that we see in many corporations today, diversity and inclusion, which becomes almost a buzzword. It doesn't really mean anything to people who live in communities suffering from deprivation and suffering racist hate crime. Yeah,
that's really, really important. And then just tell us a bit about some of the other stories that you might have heard from some of the people that you've interviewed.
I think another person that was quite interesting was Fahim Qureshi. So he set up the Luton Youth Movement. And he was telling me how they would protest and picket the local library, the central library, because the council would allow the National Front to actually hold meetings in that library. And that was only in the 80s. And it was quite interesting because I used that library, and to think that the National Front were getting away with hosting meetings there. He told me that a member of the National Front was elected to the Trade Union Council in Luton. And he talked about how in some of the outward housing estates, you know, families were being attacked. Another person told me a story about how in Bury Park, which is the heart of the Asian community in Luton, there used to be a significant Jewish community and an Irish community too. And he talked about the solidarity, and he said once the skinheads came to attack South Asians, and a Jewish butcher had saved him from that attack by putting his head under a till. I just found that such a fascinating story, and it's not something you often see in the media. It's not been documented anywhere. And it's things like that that I want to capture, you know, not just the negativity, not just the fact that, you know, we faced racism, but actually we weren't passive, we weren't victims, we fought back, and we made change.
Yeah, and we made that change, and collectively we worked together. Because I'm just reading, I'm talking to lots of people from that generation, family, friends, and people I know in the trade union movement, will tell you about the powerful stories of Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, you know, Christians, everybody being on the same platform and getting on perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think, you know, the Asian youth movements would literally send delegations to Northern Ireland to learn about the conflict there. You know, they had links with countries around the world. And it was that real sense of internationalism. And also, you know, they got involved, even though there was racism in unions, there was also good people in the unions, there was good people in political parties. They made alliances with white working class communities, with black organizations as well. And they were all about coalition building.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Now, what's going to happen once you've done your paper? Where are you going to share it? Is it going to be published in a book form?
Yeah.
What's the plans?
So I've just got funding actually from the Lippmann Miliband Fund, which is a fund that documents kind of working class history. And the plan is actually to conduct oral history interviews and create an online archive that's publicly accessible, because I don't want this to be something that sits in academia. I want this to be something that's accessible to everyone. So I hope to create an online website where we have transcripts, we have audio, and we have different stories of industrial disputes, different organizations. So hopefully look out for that coming out next year.
Yeah, that's coming out next year, and then people will be able to. In the meanwhile, if there are people who want to share their story with you, Taj, there could be people from that generation, could be their children or their grandchildren narrating what their parents have told them. Is that something that you're interested in?
Oh, definitely. And, I'm on Twitter, Taj_Ali1. You can send me a message. And, I've reached out to a lot of people for social media. You can also email me, taj.ali2792@gmail.com. And, I've already had a range of people get in touch. A lot of these people were not involved in organizations, but they have powerful stories of even their parents getting involved to defend communities, to build community organization. So I think, I'm encouraging as many people as possible to get in touch. Let's compile that history, let's document it, and let's learn from it.
I suppose we're coming to the last 5 minutes of the program. I suppose because you've spent so much time doing this and you're so passionate about this work, what would you say to today's activists? Many of them who are on the front line fighting racism and Islamophobia. What can we learn from that early generation and their struggle?
I think the first thing to say is you cannot rely simply on institutions. You cannot rely simply on political parties. Politics is the everyday. And what we learned from the Asian youth movements is they were organizing to defend mosques, to defend their shops, to defend their communities. They were in their own neighborhoods. They weren't always outside of the communities. And I think sometimes too often we forget that. We forget that what are we fighting for? We are fighting for our own communities. We need to make sure we bring everyone on board. Too often political activism can become very niche. We can get isolated in our bubbles. And we can forget that there's people to win, there's people to convince, and there's people to influence. So, reach out to people, try and organize, build coalitions. The other thing is, power concedes nothing without demand. If our parents and our grandparents and that generation who faced racist attacks, who suffered, homes being attacked, who had racist immigration legislation, who faced racism from police, if they could organize in that climate of such hostility, then what's stopping us?
Yeah, that's really, really important. What's stopping us? And I suppose it's talking to those communities and really, really important, and talking to those historians. I suppose their stories are so, so important. And it'll be such a shame if we lose that as well, that history as well. Are you going to promise to come back and tell me all about it once you've done it so we can share it at a more widespread?
I hope to share many stories with you. And, I think this can be a lot bigger than I initially thought it'd be. I think the amount of people that are interested in something like this, on the back of this, we can build, an archive where people can access it. I've been talking to local schools actually locally who are interested in adding something like this to the curriculum. So I'm hoping that, through this online archive, we can build something bigger. We can, transform the education system, especially in communities that have a significant number of South Asians. It's important that we learn our own history. And I think it will inspire many South Asians to actually study history. I think that's something we lack. We don't have many South Asians who do humanities subjects at university. And perhaps if we had more history that's something they could relate to, something that is their heritage that's available to them, we can make that change. So of course, I'm absolutely hoping to come back on the show.
Yeah, that'd be really useful. What's your final messages to our viewers watching this who might be interested in getting involved and sharing their lived experience?
Yeah, speak to people, speak to the older generation. They have many stories. And even to this day, my dad will tell me stories about his childhood. So, you need to have that curiosity as a younger person. And I think, with the older generation, I think we should appreciate them. We should value them because they fought very hard in the workplace for our rights. It's not something that was granted by the state.
Yeah, it's not right.
Sometimes we forget that.
I absolutely love it. Honestly, I could listen to you all night. If I could listen to you all night, I would. Thank you so much for joining us. Best wishes, and look forward
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, sir. Allah bless you. Allah protect you. And looking forward to seeing the end product that you bring forward. And we'll bring it here and we'll do a special thing. Even better, we might even end up in Luton and do a live broadcast from Luton when you're ready to do that. Are you still there, Taj? Oh, we literally just gone. So, okay, I'll pick up a call with him. Thank you so much for being my special guest. I really look forward to seeing the news. Thank you so much. We've reached the end of another program. First, I want to thank our special guest tonight, Idreace Mohammed, Mohammed Shafaqat and Taj Ali. Next week, we're back at the usual time of 8:30 on Wednesday. Have a great weekend whenever it comes. And the sun is out. That's why I've got no shirt on. I did that before. I have got a shirt on. I haven't got a suit jacket on. And I haven't got a tie on. I think it's time for me to go to bed. Thank you to the whole team behind the scenes. I'll see you very soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.